In the Aberdeen Bestiary, the anonymous author tells of two fire-bearing stones, one male and one female, who reside at the top of a mountain. Such is their nature that when the female draws near the male, a fire is kindled and the mountain is set alight. The tale of the fire-bearing stones reveals how the lithic possessed a transformative and potentially destructive kind of agency in the Middle Ages. In this essay, I propose that stones were conceived as innately lively in medieval thought. Used as building materials, healing talismans, for allegory making, and even in magical rituals, stones played an important role in medieval life. I employ the Aberdeen Bestiary as a touchstone from which to explore the medieval conception of the lithic. By including gemstones such as topaz, sapphire, and jasper in their classificatory project, lapidary texts, encyclopedias, and bestiaries elevated stone to quasi-living status. Recent studies on non-human things and objects have examined the efficacy inherent in stone. Political theorist Jane Bennett argues that inert matter is imbued with vibrant materiality, while the medievalist Geoffrey Jerome Cohen excavates the numerous stories about stone in his analysis of its ionic companionship with man. Indeed, as the material of our first weapons and most enduring structures, stone brings the past and present into intimate proximity. Thinking geologically allows us to look beyond our own anthropocentrism. Revisiting the vitality of stone in the Middle Ages invigorates current conversations on stone and ultimately liberates the lithic from its stony silence. Bestiaries were a resource that categorised and taxonomised all creatures on God's earth in the Middle Ages. These illustrated volumes amalgamated religious lessons with pseudo-scientific thought to create a kind of moralised natural history that included creatures both real and fantastical alike. In the medieval period, bestiaries therefore played an important role in disseminating and promoting Christian values among their readership, who were mostly clergy, nobility, and other learned elite, but also likely reached a wider audience through oral performance. The inclusion of stone in many of these bestiaries provides the first indication of its liveliness in medieval thought. Why did medieval bestiaries, encyclopedic compendiums of living creatures, often include non-living rocks in their taxonomy? The Aberdeen Bestiary, a 13th century illuminated manuscript and one of the most celebrated extant English bestiaries, is one such text. It opens with an excerpt from Genesis that recounts the creation of man by God. It reads, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the beasts, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." The creation sequence is situated at the outset of the manuscript and thereby structurally establishes a key theme of the bestiary, natural hierarchy. It is this assertion of human dominion over all other life that provides the organising framework for the bestiary itself. In the ensuing folios, the manuscript author conducts a natural taxonomy, cataloguing all living things in accordance with the ladder of nature, humans first, then beasts, birds, fish, and finally mineral materials such as rocks, gemstones, and metals. Art historian Deborah Hassig explores bestiary imagery in her 1995 publication, Medieval Bestiaries, Text, Image and Ideology. She suggests that by the later 12th century, the bestiary was perceived as a long visual and verbal commentary on Genesis, an elaborate exegesis and explanation for God's particular choices for his creation, which included not only beasts but also humans, plants, land masses, and so forth. Hassig argues that the inclusion of certain plants and stones through the popular practice of binding herbals together with and lapidaries together with bestiaries reveals how such texts were meant to reflect a larger cosmological system created by God. The bestiary was therefore a highly inclusive genre with a wide encyclopedic scope. Although organised by a Christian structure that affirmed human sovereignty, the inclusion of inert materials in the bestiary suggests a non-anthropocentric perspective that elevates rock to quasi-sentience. Indeed, in the Middle Ages, stone was considered as lively and restless as any other living creature depicted in the bestiary. The first stone described in the Aberdeen Bestiary, the fire-bearing stone, immediately exemplifies this striking vitality. On a certain mountain in the east, there are fire-bearing stones which are called, in Greek, terebolum. They are male and female. When they are far from each other, the fire within them does not ignite, but when the female draws near the male, by chance the fire is at once kindled, with the result that everything around the mountain burns. Here the author attests to the existence of a strange rock that resides mysteriously eastwards, an exotic, distant locus that in medieval thinking often denoted the edges of the known world where monstrous races were thought to dwell. Most notably, the firestones of the manuscript are humanised and gendered as male and female. According to the Bestiary, these gendered stones, like humans, experience sexual attraction, and when they come together, they suggestively combust. Interestingly, the tradition of lithic gendering predates the Aberdeen Bestiary. Sexually dimorphic stones were thought to originate in the lapidary of 2nd century Greek philosopher Theophrastus, who wrote in his treatise on stones of a rock called Lingurium that was said to be produced by a lynx and have distinct male and female forms. Later, Dominican Albertus Magnus, in his 13th century Book of Minerals, would go on to ascribe stone gender. He claimed, for example, that quicksilver was a distinctly female matter, while sulphur was male, an alchemical pairing that when combined would breed gold. In the Aberdeen manuscript, the anthropomorphizing account of the fire-bearing stones is visually complemented by a colourful illustration that pictorially transforms the fire rocks into a man and a woman. The miniature is comprised of 2 sections that function as a 2-part allegorical narrative. In the upper section, a nude man and woman, separated by a fruit-bearing tree atop a mountain, offer each other round stone-like objects. The iconography of the illustration, the ornate trees and the naked couple together recall the Genesis theme of the Bestiary's opening folios and remind the reader of Adam and Eve's transgression in the Garden of Eden. The narrative progresses in the lower register as the progenitors succumb to temptation and embrace, consequently transforming the mountain into a fiery pyre. Here the flames, which suggestively cover the groins of the couple, contribute to the overarching Christian moral. They serve as an exemplum against burning lust and, by extension, the fiery pits of eternal damnation. In his book, which explores the symbolic significance of stone in the Middle Ages, medievalist Geoffrey Drome-Cohen helpfully dissects the Christian significance of fire rock imagery. He argues that such representations make good biblical sense. Because fire is an easy allegory for lust, a devoutly Christian story divulged by stone almost writes itself. As Cohen suggests, in the Middle Ages, stone therefore had a storytelling capacity. It could divulge moral meaning, urging chastity and cautioning against unbridled lust. Not only is the fire-bearing stone used for religious allegory making, but its potential to ignite and incinerate landscapes demonstrates its destructive sense of agency. In her 2009 monograph, Vibrant Matter, Jane Bennett coins the term thing power, a concept that gestures towards the curious ability of inanimate things to act, to produce effects dramatic and subtle. Trash, Bennett argues, should be considered an accumulating pile of lively and potentially dangerous matter, while electricity should be viewed not simply as a resource, commodity or instrumentality, but also, and more radically, as an actant. In the Aberdeen Bestiary, the fire-bearing stone seemed to anticipate Bennett's theory. The fire rocks exhibited dangerous thing power through their penchant for combustion and destruction. Indeed, the mountain-dwelling rocks are said to ignite, with the result that everything around the mountain burns, a description that not only provides fuel for Christian metaphor, but also offers an early explanation for the mechanism of volcanic eruption. In fact, the account of 2 stones meeting to create a fiery explosion bears surprising similarities to the actual geological formation of volcanoes via the meeting of tectonic plates. Thus, the seismic influence of inorganic matter is evident in the early Middle Ages. As a destructive and uncontrollable natural phenomenon, the fire-bearing stones are what Bennett calls effective catalysts. Capable of motion, transformation, and ultimately self-destruction, the firestones of the Bestiary wield a vibrant thing power in their ability to behave volcanically, wreaking elemental havoc over the natural landscape. Furthermore, the Aberdeen Bestiary provides yet more evidence of the vitality of stone by blurring the boundaries between lithic and human bodies. In the manuscript, man is infused with stoniness, while lithic objects are endowed with sentience. The chronology of the Bestiary itself demonstrates this role reversal. The illustration of the fire-bearing stones is contained within the same folio as the 7th stage of the Age of Man, an account which narrates the final phase of a man's life, death. It reads, "The word for buried, sepultus, is so called because the body is that at that point without a pulse, sine pulsu, or palpitation, that is, motionless. The word sepulere means to bury bodies. We use the words omer and abrure, that is, to cast earth on the body." Here the final lines of the bestiary, before it dissolves into lapidary description, render the deceased human body stone-like. In the passage, the manuscript author explains in etymological terms how human beings become motionless in death and return to the earthly matter of the grave, a betrayal with unmistakable Petric parallels. Notably, this lithic depiction of man is located on the same page as the lively miniature of fire rocks, a compositional choice that highlights the complicated boundaries between the human and material world in medieval thinking. Within a single folio, the roles of animate man and inanimate stone are inverted. During burial, man is imbued with stony properties, represented as inert and earthen, while rock is humanized through anthropomorphic illustration, made corporeal and lustful, revealing the hazy margins between inert matter and vital life in the Middle Ages. What's more, in the Aberdeen Bestiary, the manuscript author expounds upon the miraculous attributes of a plethora of stones. In fact, the final 15 folios of the manuscript are devoted to enumerating the magical properties of precious gems. Hyacinth, for example, changes colour in accordance with the weather. Jasper wards off hallucinations induced by fever, while lodestone contests the chastity of a man's wife. He need only place the lodestone beneath her head when she is asleep, and if she is chaste, she will embrace him warmly, otherwise she will fall from the bed as if struck. The supposed celestial, curative and protective abilities of stone in the bestiary speak to the persistence of pre-Christian ideas in Britain. For medieval people, magical stones were familiar and everyday objects found in household kitchens, thought to provide medicinal aid, increase personal power, or grant good fortune. Geologist Dorothy Wyckoff describes the survival of non-Christian ideas through these everyday customs. She argues that despite the attitude of the church towards heathen superstitions, even devout Christians could not entirely shake off the old belief that precious stones possess some sort of supernatural powers. Thus, Christian writers attempted to accommodate lithic agency into the framework of their faith. The synthesis of Christian and non-Christian narratives on stone is acutely apparent in the Aberdeen Bestiary. Although produced in a monastic setting by a Christian scribe, the manuscript is replete with pre-Christian superstition that confers stone preternatural power beyond the inorganic norm. Pearl is a gemstone that epitomizes this religious hybridity. On one hand, the bestiary author acknowledges the purifying or medicinal qualities of pearl. It is described as white and round and disposes you to sleep. By contrast, its magical properties are legitimized through scriptural metaphor, with the formation of a pearl in an oyster likened to the miraculous conception of the Virgin Saint Mary. Thus there grows within the stone a most precious shining pearl indeed. Conceived from the heavenly dew and given lustre by the rays of the sun, the stone, therefore, is called concus. It symbolizes Saint Mary, of whom Isaiah foretold, saying, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son." To this extent, magical gemstones, through their association with both biblical miracle as well as pre-Christian superstition, assumed a dual nature in the medieval period, as stone came to embody the convergence of pagan and Christian ideologies. The supernatural properties of stone in the medieval period continue to resonate within the contemporary cultural consciousness. The final stone mentioned in the Aberdeen Bestiary, chelonite, is perhaps the most powerful stone of the manuscript. It has the power to divine the events of the future, an ability that hints at the capacity of lithic objects to defy temporal boundaries and bring knowledge of a different time into the present in a way that humans cannot. When placed under the tongue of the waxing moon, the stone is said to give you power to see the future. The idea of the prophetic stone has persisted in modern media. In J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, for example, a series which borrowed many ideas from Old English literature, the seven seeing stones of Gondor, or the Palantir, not only have the ability to communicate with each other, but they can be used to peer through time and space. Likewise, in Harry Potter, the Philosopher's Stone grants the user immortal life, while more recently, the Infinity Stones of the Avengers franchise allow their wielder to manipulate the very fabric of time and space. These examples keenly illustrate the cultural impact left by medieval bestiary and lapidary tradition. Indeed, the survival of these mystical stones stands as a testimony to their enduring, vibrant materiality. Undoubtedly, stone possessed a powerful vitality in the Aberdeen bestiary and in wider medieval thinking. The account of the fire-bearing stones shows that rock was a lively medium that communicated ideas, stories, and religious messages. By transcending their inert form and taking on anthropomorphic gendered shape, these firestones served as tools for Christian moralization. However, lithic vitality extended beyond the confines of biblical allegory making. The plethora of stones described in the final folios of the Aberdeen Bestiary exemplify Bennett's theory. Their believed destructive, curative, protective, and even prophetic abilities demonstrate their potent thing power. That is to say, they act as quasi-agents or forces with trajectories, propensities, or tendencies of their own. In today's consumer-driven world, where materials are expended and discarded with little regard for their impact on the environment, it is crucial to reflect upon the vitality of materials in the past. Medieval thinking invites us to reconceptualize stone not merely as an inanimate object, but as a vibrant entity capable of affecting and being affected. Ultimately, by remembering the significance of stone in the past, we can perhaps cultivate a more mindful relationship with the materials that shape our world in the future.